G'day guys, Mankey Theatre Circle, and today, the Thousand Suns, getting started in Horus Heresy. I'm not a very biased man, despite what a lot of people may think. This is my own legion, and, well, they're the most overpowered and one of the more poorly written legions in the Horus Heresy currently. There are a few checks and balances which they should have against them, and a few things that don't make sense. And where practical along the way, I'll try and cover off on it. So this episode's going to be a little bit harder than normal episodes because we've got to factor in things like psychic powers as we go and how we choose our units. With that in mind, let's get started. First of all, Legion special rules. The Covenant of Sorcerers. Your army's warlord must be an independent character with a psychic mastery level of at least 1 and have the highest available leadership in your force. Now, makes it very hard to take Thousand Suns as allies. It makes it very hard to take your Centurions over your Praetors as a HQ warlord. So it can limit what characters you take. Generally, I've found I've had no problems with it. Can be a bit of a pain in the ass at times, but generally your warlord will have a mastery level of 3 and will be a Praetor or some such. So again, not really a problem. I find the Praetor is a perfectly good fit for the Thousand Suns. The Delegatus is also very strong with the Thousand Suns, which are the two that sort of compete for the warlord slot. Prosperine Law. As Thousand Suns, you have access to all the disciplines other than Malefic Demonology, and any independent HQ may buy a mastery level of 1, which, funny enough, includes your chaplains, your forge breakers, your siege breakers, forge lords. I kind of combined those into the same character then, didn't I? Your Praevian consuls, which can be very strong, Primus Medicaes, Moritats, all that kind of thing. What's interesting is that it doesn't actually make your librarians any stronger because they don't have a mastery level. They have a mastery level to start with, which means they can't actually add to it. It's silly. So your librarians know better than anyone else's, but everyone else becomes a better psyker. So work that one out. Now, interesting thing you can also do is any independent character that becomes a psyker may exchange a power weapon for a force weapon for just 5 points. Now, do keep in mind, a power weapon is just that. That's a force sword, force axe, force maul, or power sword, power axe, power maul / staff, whatever. Fists, chain fists, thunder hammers, all that kind of thing are not power weapons. Just not super important, but keep it in mind. So, the big thing for the Thousand Suns is the Cult Arcana. Basically, when you select your army, every single squad that has Legiones Astartes Thousand Suns rule, so basically any infantry, bikes, characters, jet troops, that kind of thing, will all have this rule. You get to pick a cult. Now, there are 5 cults to pick from. The only stipulation is that whatever your warlord selects, your 2 compulsory troops choices must select the same cult, unless you're running Magnus, or if you're running Amon, because Amon, one of these special characters, allows you to take from either of his 2 cults that he runs. Just a little thing for later. Anyway, the cults themselves, you have to be very careful when you pick them because, again, what you do for the Praetor, or the Warlord, will impact on your troops. And you want to try and pick something that kind of helps both. I mean, it's always going to be a bonus over a standard Legionnaire from another Legion, but still, you want to try and pick something that sort of has a little bit of synchronization or actually makes them better. So, for example, let's go through the cults and then I'll give the examples. That'll probably be easiest. For me, this sort of comes naturally, and I can talk about it with Thousand Suns players, but I'm trying to introduce this to new players, so it is quite difficult. So, the Pavoni. These guys add +1 to all run and sweeping advance distances. And if you use Biomancy, then you get your rolls off on a 3+. This is across the board, so whichever cult lines up with a psychic discipline, you cast on a 3+. Very handy. Raptora is the second cult. You get a 6+ invulnerable save, or +1 to any other invulnerable saves that you may take. Corvidae. Units that remain static, reroll 1s to hit with shooting, and Psychers obviously get their 3+, divination, blah 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 blah. For the Athenaean, you get immune to fear and adamantium will, and your telepathy is on a 3+. And lastly, Pyre. Your Hammer of Wrath for all your units, and you get an extra Hammer of Wrath for things that already have it, such as bikes, jump packs, that kind of thing. And you get your Pyromancy on a 3+. So, examples. I said I'd give examples. So let's say you're playing against Night Lords. A good, strong discipline if you're against Night Lords would be to take the Athenaean cult, because the whole army will be immune to all their fear-causing shenanigans. That's strong. Same thing if you're fighting against Mechanicum. That said, Corvidae. Rerolling 1s to hit with shooting if you remain still. I think on a heavy support squad, that's just fucking awesome. Very good also on things like jet bikes, seeker squads, that kind of thing. Also, you could have Raptora, so the +1 invulnerable save. Don't just automatically sort of assign it to Terminators, because yes, Cataphracti with Raptora cult will have a 3+ invulnerable save. But think about other things like breaches, for example. Legion breaches, which are much cheaper than Terminators, and scale up really well for points as you make the unit bigger. You can have a 5+ invulnerable outside of combat and a 4+ in combat on a stock Marine who has reroll failed armor saves against blast and template weapons. That's very strong in Zone Mortalis, in my personal opinion. The only one that doesn't really rock my world is the Pavoni cult, but does aid with Biomancy, and again used on the right units. If you want to get that Biomancy off, you're going to pick Pavoni, aren't you? Because getting off your abilities on a 3+, very strong. And in fact, going back to the Athenaean cult, where immune to fear and adamantium will. Let's say the other guy you're playing against has a Mastery 2 Psyker, so a strong Psyker, or middle of the road Psyker. If you have a Praetor, you'll deny his rolls on a 5+ for being a Psyker, a 4+ for being a stronger Psyker, and then finally a 3+ because of the adamantium will. That's very fucking strong. Abilities targeted at you are just simply not going to work. The abilities they cast on themselves, like Divination, especially, a bit different. They'll probably still get those off, but things cast at you, well, yeah, you're fine, you've got this. Now, obviously, all these bonuses do have a negative, and basically for the Thousand Suns, it's the whole flesh change thing. If you suffer a Perils of the Warp, and you actually cop a wound from the Perils of the Warp, and that's the thing, actually need to be hurt by it, then every unit with the Thousand Suns Legiones Astartes rule has to take an immediate pinning check, and if all of your independent characters in the detachment are slain, then the rest of the force automatically is -1 leadership for the rest of the game, and you can no longer sweeping advance, which pretty much blows the Pavoni cult away, unfortunately. Now, this really does cripple the Thousand Suns, losing all your characters, because, well, you lose all the psychic shenanigans, unfortunately. But the best way to look at the cults is being very similar to the Alpha Legion and their mutable tactics. You can tailor your army on the run to suit the games you're playing. You don't have to lock yourself in and pay points for certain things, no. Before each game, you just pick what cult your troops are, but you have to lay it out and make it really easy for your opponent. Things like little coloured rocks, for example, like you get those rocks out of the fish tanks or marbles, that kind of thing. You just get a set of green, blue, red, whatever, and maybe use those and put them on the units on top of the your army list for each unit. So say, okay, all the ones that are green are obviously Pavoni, Cult, and running Biomancy. Really good way of doing it. One of the things I don't like though is that the cult you pick, well, you don't have to take a power from that cult. So you could pick Raptora, for example, that does telekinesis, but then take divination for your psychic powers, which I think is silly. That should be a restriction that either you can't take it at all, or if you do, it becomes worse. Because since you have studied telekinesis, why should you be really good at divination? You shouldn't. You should be bad at it, or just unable to do it. So a bit of a rules oversight by Forge World there, especially because you see things like, this is a very common one, Thousand Sons Praetors, with their 4+ invulnerable saves, picking the Raptora cult, getting a 3+ invulnerable save, and then getting divination or biomancy, which makes them just ridiculously strong. Anyway, enough of the cults, let's move on. Unique wargear, arcane litanies. So this is a one-use only item, and you can buy it for independent characters. You just take it. It means that you ignore the first perils of the warp that model cops. Just use it. Other weapons that wargear that we have are the Ether Fire Cannon or Ether Flame Cannon. It changes from page to page thanks to the brilliant editing of Book 7. You get a Plasma Cannon, costs 10 points more, and it adds Soul Blaze. Soul Blaze is a shit rule, so it's one of those things that you have to pay points for, but is not really worth it. I hate these sort of rules. Like Fear is another one where they seem to assign these sort of arbitrary points values to them. They think are really good. Like, oh, Fear, you know, that's gonna come in so handy in a game that's full of shit that's immune to fear, right? Yeah, it's stupid. You pay way too much for these sort of upgrades, and Soul Blaze isn't worth it. The Ether Fire Cannon, it's fine. I think the best thing about it is the fact that it is a plasma cannon and is mounted on a type of automata that we'll cover off on later, which makes it strong because it's an option that unit otherwise wouldn't have. The best item we have is actually Asphyx Shells, which any bolt type weapon in the army of our independent characters, Legion Veterans or Legion Terminators, basically get shred. Very good, very good. You can also give it to Rotor Cannon Tacticals, but it's a waste of money, waste of points. Rotor Cannon Tacticals are shit, never use them. I'm sorry, it just is what it is. It's not worth taking. There are way better options out there for weapons. We also have a relic, the Luminiferous Resonator, Strength 10 AP3 salvo weapon, works against target's leadership instead of toughness. Yeah, short ranged. I don't really like it. Doesn't really seem very Thousand Suns to me, and it's not very good. Speaking of which, Thousand Suns units. Praetors, as I mentioned earlier, you can upgrade them to mastery level of 3. We also can upgrade Terminators, the Legion Terminators, and Legion Veterans to mastery level 1, Brotherhood of Psychers, which, yeah, pretty strong, and in fact probably best said as overpowered, especially on the Legion Veterans. Legion Veterans with something like Divination, running maybe Corvidae so that they get the reroll ones to hit, and Sniper Rule and all that kind of... Yeah, you can come up with some really nasty combinations, and it's not in any way, shape or form balanced if a person does so. But that's where things like Phosphex Quad Mortars and Whirlwind Scorpius come in as the great rebalancer, right? So that will automatically rebalance your Legion and your whack attitude if you do it. Other units we have the Assyrian Dreadnought, which is an upgrade for your Contemptor Dreadnoughts. Basically, you become a Librarian Dreadnought for 50 points. And you get Mastery Level 1, Adamantium Will, and you get a Force weapon for your Dreadnought, Close Combat Weapon. Yeah, again, poorly written. Apparently you move to the HQ slot. Now, does this move the entire Dreadnought Talon? So if you have 3 Dreadnoughts, does the whole Talon now count as a HQ? Or does that model become moved out of the Talon and become a HQ? Or does it stay in the Talon? Or do you have to upgrade all 3 in the Talon to an Osirian, and it's not filled out. It doesn't explain it, doesn't go into any detail. I think that's a problem. Next up, we have the Castellax Arcana Battle Automata. So you get a Castellax, but instead of having to work off a Cortex controller, they just have to be within 24 inches of a Psyker. That's awesome. All their weapons, by the way, they all have Asphyx shells on all their bolt weapons, and they can upgrade their Mauler pattern bolt cannon, which has shred, to an Ether Flame cannon, which is the plasma cannon with Soul Blaze. You got Rage, you're Fearless, you're a monstrous creature, you can self-destruct, it's kind of lame if you do. Interesting thing though, you can cast psychic powers through them if you're close enough to the unit. So you can use them for line of sight purposes. So if you're playing something like Zone Mortalis, for example, they're on one side of a wall, your Librarian's on another. Your Librarian could cast an attack using the Castellax as the point of origin for units he otherwise would not be able to see. Pretty cool rule. Other units we have the Sekhmet Terminators, or as they were known when they first released, the Sekhmeta. Basically, these are 2-wound Terminators, which are very cheap. Too cheap, probably about 10 points at least too cheap, if not more. I won't lie. Told you I wouldn't lie, this is my own Legion, and I know what they are, but I don't really take them, so... they're Terminators, they've got 2 wounds, they've got Asphyx shells, they all have force weapons, they've all got stubborn... Yeah, they cost 5 points more than a regular Legion Terminator. That's broken. Yes, there is some rebalancing in the fact that they can't take a lot of other weapons that Terminators normally could, such as... your Reaper autocannons, that kind of thing. Still, incredibly fucking strong unit. They also get to pick their 2 powers, because they're a Mastery Level 2 Brotherhood of Psykers unit. The one to go for, of course, is Telekinesis, because Pyrite is shit, and Telekinesis, hey, +1 to your Invulnerable save anyway for your Cult, so it makes you a 3-up Invul save on the Cataphracti, which is very strong, of course. And because Telekinesis has abilities like Levitation, for example, so you just move the whole unit 12 inches on top of your normal move, and you can still charge that turn. Broken. Because they get it. If you get to pick your powers, why wouldn't you pick it? It would be stupid not to. And they cast it on a 3+, so you got very good chance of just casting it on 1 dice. Throw 2 at it just to be sure, and you're Mastery 2, so you're going to have the dice to do it. And if they've got an independent character attached to them, well, they take the independent character with them when they do so. It's stupid. These should be probably 15 points more per model. When you look at what they give compared to units like the Justinian Terminators or the Phoenix Terminators, you just sort of find yourself going, man, these are better in pretty much every way. Yeah, I lose a lot of weapon options, but still, they are so strong, and there's a reason that people form whole armies around these, because they're so hard to kill. Especially if you've got, like, say, a Psychic Primus Medicae attached to the unit, yet feel no pain on the unit, and he was probably rolling something like Biomancy to make them even stronger, or Divination. It gets out of control. We have another specialist unit, the Kenetai Occult Blade Cabal, which are one of those units like the Formentaris Terminators in the Ultramarines, where the more models in a unit, the more special rules they get. They all have twin force swords, they start at weapon skill 5, and they've got Brotherhood of Psykers. And obviously the more models you add, 1 to 3 is +1 attack, 4 to 8 +1 weapon skill, 9 to 10, yet another attack. Gets pretty crazy. I myself have actually pulled off a charge with the unit with warp speed on. 7 weapon skill, 5 attacks, it was weapon skill 6 at the time, and they had a chaplain attached, so 70 attacks at weapon skill 6 coming out of my squad at initiative 7. Who the hell was going to survive that? But unlike other units, these are a lot harder to play. They're in simple power armor, they're not in artificer armor, so they die just as easily as any other marine, and you pay a buckload of points for them. In fact, they're the same sort of price as the Sekhmet Terminators, and the segment have 2 wounds each, 2+ armor saves, and 3+ invols, and get to pick their powers and have an additional mastery level. So yeah, the Kenetai, I love using them. I use them over the sec meta all the time because I love them. I think they're just cool as shit. But they're a hard unit to use, and they die so easily. So if you're going to take them, take a transport. Lastly, we have a type of recon sniper unit, the Amatara Occult Intercession Cabal, which is basically recon marines. They do have their own custom psychic power, and they're a brotherhood of snipers. Always call them a brotherhood of snikers. Not sure what that is, a Snickers bar maybe, but that's psychic snipers. So yeah, that's our specialist units. It's a lot to get through, the Thousand Suns. They're probably the most complicated legions to pick up and play, especially if you don't know your way around the psychic powers. Personally, I don't like the way psychic powers work, but it's here to stay, unfortunately. Nobody wants to get off their ass and fix psychic powers beyond fixing invisibility. So, slow clap for Forge World on that one. You wrote a new rulebook, but you couldn't be bothered to fix the psychic phase. Even when I wrote you a new one, with over 20 years of experience, I wrote you a new psychic phase, and you couldn't be bothered implementing anything different. So, sorry I'm a little bit bitter about that, but everyone who's played it knows that it is just a bottleneck for the game, the psychic phase with Thousand Suns, because everything's flowing really smoothly and freely, and you're moving units all over the place and shooting so good, and all of a sudden you get to this phase where it's just random, coming at you from every direction, and it's all over the shop, and yeah, I hate it. But anyway, on to the models. The Thousand Suns Legion Vanguard. So this is all your... well, this is the bundle you want. You get a Terminator Armored Praetor, you get 5 Sekhmet Terminators, who you don't have to use as Sekhmet. Don't be that guy. You can use them as regular Legion Terminators. There's nothing wrong with that in Cataphractii armor. You can still be Brotherhood of Psychers level 1, they'll just be balanced. A Contemptor Dreadnought, always take a Contemptor Dreadnought, and a 10-man squad of Tacticals with upgrades to make them Veteran Tacticals. Do it. Buy this bundle. It's beautiful for you. You'll love it. Next unit, Tech Marine in Mark III armor. Take him, put the Thousand Suns conversion parts on him, which I'm about to go into, to make him look like a Thousand Sun. The Psychic Hood on a Thousand Sun is actually that funny looking crest on their helmet, the Egyptian-y parts. Yeah, that's their Psychic Hood. All Thousand Suns actually had armor which had a little jewel in the chest. They were all handmade by Magnus for them. He loved his Legion a lot, probably a little too much. But yeah, a Master of the Forge HQ option is what you want to run this guy as. And of course, upgrade him to a Thousand Sun, give him a Force Weapon, because why not? And the Servo Arm, Rad Grenades, all those good things, and upgrade him to a Mastery level of 1. Now, the Kenetai Blade Occult, I find this set so good for upgrading all my squad sergeants. You can give them the lovely Egyptian style swords. These crests and chests really make them stick out from inside their squads. And in fact, if you look at them painted up, they're just beautiful. These are in the lovely candy red, of course. I've painted up my whole army in the candy red as well, because I think it just looks shit hot. But yeah, it makes your sergeants really stick out from the tactical squads and that kind of thing that they're in, especially for the ones that are in like veterans that may have force weapons. Anyway, further upgrades. The Achaean pattern armor upgrades, these are, well, you don't need the shoulder pads as such, but the shoulder pads, they have that sort of different trim to them, that very sorcerer trim that people may recognise from 40k, which is very similar to the Thousand Sun shoulder pads on their sorcerers in the past. And of course the helmets are very veteran styled helmets. And then of course you have the regular line troops sort of helmets. And unlike other legions, I do suggest people go to the effort of putting Thousand Suns helmets on all of their models. I did it for all of mine because that is the fluff. That's true to their character. Helmets are really cheap to buy on their own from Forge World. And the Thousand Suns wore the helmets because they had the psychic hoods in them to help protect them from the warp. So That's what all these funny crests are. They aren't just for show. You know, it's not about who has the biggest crest is the coolest guy. No, that's where they kept their psychic hood. So do make that little bit of effort if you're going to play Thousand Suns. Now, going into Elite's choices, the Mark IV Ironclad Dreadnought. I didn't use this model personally. I used a stripped down version of the Games Workshop Venerable Dreadnought. And I used a set of missile launchers off the Derrideo Dreadnought to give it 2 missile arms. The reason you do this is because you actually get a pretty decent anti-air unit. You get 2 twin-linked missile launchers, and you can also give it 2 hunter-killer missiles. You're firing it like ballistic skill 5 as a mortis. It's a really strong anti-air unit, and it can mop up infantry with the constant crack missiles or frag missile barrage. And it's something we haven't done in this series before. I've actually got 3 of them, even though I can't really play all 3 at once in my armies, but I've got them if I want them. For the actual force itself, Burning of Prospero box. Everything you need, and, well, possibly more. Yeah, you don't need the Custodes, so sell them online. You don't need the Sisters of Silence, because they're like the worst thing you would possibly put with Thousand Suns, and you don't need Gygor Fell-Handed, the Space Wolf special character. Arzagaraman, however, no matter how much I dislike his model, this is a good HQ model for people. You could use his weapon as a Force Axe or a Force Staff. Believe it or not, on Araman, apparently that's a Force Axe. I don't get it either, that big halberd looking thing. But, you know, there's a Praetor, there's a Librarian, there's a Master of Signals, there's whatever you want basically, because Thousand Suns are so stylized, and, like, again, their psychic hoods don't look like other people's. Their antennae and things like that don't look like other people's because they don't use those things. They don't use radios to communicate, they use their powers. And because of all this sort of thing, you can really get away with using characters in funny ways. And of course, then you get all your Mark III Marines, which you can paint up as Thousand Suns or whatever, and you get some Tartarus Terminators as well. So lots of value for you in the Burning of Prospero box, and you get the HQ as well. Now for some fast attack, Scimitar Pattern Jet Bikes. I really think that with the Corvidae Cult, these go really hard. The fact that you've got like heavy weapons, well, you get to reroll ones to hit. Wasted on a Plasma Cannon, yes, but on a Volkite Culverian or Heavy Bolters or Multi-Melters, strong, very strong. Thing is, you can't move and get that rerolling to hit, so you really just want to sort of sit these guys in the back line, then rush them in against targets of opportunity. Moving on, the Castellax Achaea. Now, this is actually a bundle, and you get 2 different types in this. You get the Ether Flame or Ether Fire, again, depends on the page you read in the book, well-edited book, and the Mauler Pattern Bolt Cannon. Both options are pretty good, and if you get a mix of them throughout the army, they'll go great. Don't load up on them completely. I think just the mana pool of 2 of them, and if you remember back to that Master of the Forge we talked about earlier, if he's got a Cortex controller, he can actually join the unit and heal them as you go. Very strong. Yeah, not much I can really say about them. They're just a good unit. The only downside is that a Praevian Consul cannot take them as his automata. I know that sucks, but another way of looking at it is if you do take a Praevian Consul, there's nothing to stop you using these as counts as regular Castellax, maybe with a Darkfire Cannon and a Mauler Pattern Bolt Cannon. What's wrong with that? So, you know, they're just a better model in general for your needs. Next, when it comes to your Legion Heavy squads, again, what I was talking about earlier, the Corvidae Cult. Rerolling ones to hit, if you don't move, you're not going to move your heavy weapons, are you? Volkite Culverians, Las Cannons, Missile Launchers, Autocannons, all made better just by being Thousand Suns. Do it. If you have a Master of Signals who's a Thousand Sun attached to them, well, you're going to go up to Ballistic Skill 5, so you're always going to be pretty much hitting with every single dice you roll, because 2's to hit with a reroll. Yeah, okay. Lastly, Deimos Pattern Vindicator Laser Destroyer. I have 3 of these, and these are my main anti-tank. because they are brutally strong, and to me, I've always seen the Thousand Sons as less of a conventional ordnance force. They seem so arrogant and high and mighty. They would be the guys who go for the laser over the cannon, right? So that's why I picked the Vindicator with the laser destroyer over the Vindicator with the demolisher. 1,000 Suns would be like, huh, conventional ordnance? How pathetic. You know, they'd be very uppity about it. And of course, the very, very last thing of all, 1,000 Suns Legion transfer sheet. Yes, all the decals you need, and yeah, very good transfer sheet. I've got a couple of them. The only downside is you never quite have enough symbols, no matter how hard you try, because a lot of the cooler symbols, like the scarabs with the wings sort of going about them that you see, all the ones that are designed for like Kennetai Bladed Cult shoulders and that kind of thing, they look really good on your HQs, so you go and use them on your HQs, and then you get to your 10-man squads and you're like, oh fuck, I don't have enough. Yeah, first world problems, right? But still, a great decal sheet. Looks really, really good. And like I said, I've done like 8,000 points of 1,000 Suns, painted to the Forge World level or higher in some instances. And yeah, I can't fault it. So to recap, 1,000 Suns Legion Vanguard. Get your HQ, 2 Elites choices, and 3 if you want to run the squad of Marines as veterans. Master of the Forge, some Kennetai Bladed Cult upgrades, or Arcane pattern upgrades, or regular power armor upgrades for the 1,000 Suns. An Ironclad Dreadnought, or any Dreadnought really that looks the part. With missile launchers, 2 missile launchers. A Burning of Prospero box, a squad of Scimitar jet bikes, a Castellax Achaea Battle Automata maniple, some sort of heavy weapons. I prefer the Volkites because they're so good at mincing infantry, but pick what works best for you. And the Demos pattern Vindicator laser destroyer, garnished with all these Legion transfers on a sesame seed bun. Now, after this episode pops up, shortly afterwards, hopefully, there's another episode going up where I just sort of talk about the 1,000 Suns in general for a bit. Don't have to watch it if you don't like, but I just had some thoughts lately and I wanted to ramble for a bit, so as a little bonus bit of content, I'm just going to pop that up. Anyway, big subject to cover 1,000 Suns, because again, the psychic powers thing, they're so different to everyone else. Just, yeah, big topic. Very complicated, not a beginner's army. This is your advanced level of Legion army. This is about as hard as it gets, where Chimerae Black Shields are like the simplest of legions you could run, while the 1,000 Suns with all the different cults and psychic powers are the hardest of legions to run, where you've got to put the most thought into what special rules you pick for each game and that kind of thing. And they are overpowered, so they're one of those legions where they play to their fluff very well, but it gets so hard to balance them because of the way their rules work. You couldn't just assign an arbitrary points value to them. I just think they could have been written and worded a bit better. Anyway, I'm Mac with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching the episode, and I'll see you all next time.